Welcome again to the LPL brief. Today we had some actually pretty good games overall for the LPL. Yeah, I'm gonna add that caveat there. For the LPL, we had some pretty good games, but before we get into those, I want to talk about the Group B lock. The interesting thing about Group B right now, and probably why some people say that Group B overall is greater than Group A, is because you have kind of a battle for playoff seeding in Group B. There are three teams that probably are of similar level, but only two remaining playoff seeds now that Edward Gaming have defeated Royal Never Give Up and sort of clinched that spot. There's going to be a very close match coming up where almost every match that teams play matters a whole lot. But before we get to that, I'm going to talk a little bit about Group A and Group A situation and why, we have these bottom two clear-cut, not that great teams, and where I just kind of guess that teams will end up. First of all, we're going to take a look at Group A just slightly. QG are not doing so well, so they're actually suddenly in danger of losing their first place seed. This is very important because it gives you a bye directly into the semifinals. Otherwise, you just get a bye into the quarterfinals, and then before that, you get into the quarterfinal seeding match, either with a one match advantage if you're in third place, or not. A one match disadvantage, I guess you should say. Right now, what's on your screen is probably going to be it. Like I said, there's going to be a battle for first place between WE and QG, most likely, at the end of the week. Tomorrow's match between WE and LGD matters a whole lot for that reason as well. If WE can beat LGD, then that's pretty good for them. If LGD can win tomorrow, then they probably lock in a spot in the playoffs for themselves, and there are no longer going to be playoff spots up for grabs in that case in Group A. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty even. I think Snake have pretty much defined themselves as the third place team in Group A. That's, in all likelihood, not going to change. LGD can't really move up. They played 3 more series, I believe. I have to win all of them. And it's LGD. So, I also think that because of Snake's opponents, they still have to play EPA, for example. They'll be pretty set in third place. So what you see is kind of what you get in Group A. Moving on to Group B, which is the main subject of the conversation, we're talking about OMG, Invictus Gaming, and Vici Gaming. At the moment, it looks kind of like OMG are in a pretty cushy spot for third place, but the reality is that they are inflated by the fact that they've already faced Hyper Youth Gaming, Invictus Gaming, and Vici Gaming haven't. Hyper Youth Gaming have only won one series so far, so them kind of playing spoiler is very unlikely. We're just going to assume that Invictus Gaming and Vici Gaming will beat Hyper Youth Gaming in both of those matches. It's not like Masters 3 or Energy Pacemaker All, where you could theoretically see them winning more games. Hyper Youth Gaming are just bad. They've won 3 games in total the entire split. They're not going to do anything. So, Invictus Gaming, Vici Gaming, just add a win to both of them for Hyper Youth Gaming, and then you can have a better idea of just how close this is. You would have, in that case, oh my god, at 8-5, alright, because they've already played HYG, so their total doesn't change. You have Invictus Gaming at 8-7, and you have Vici Gaming at 7-7. Right away, you see, because Vici Gaming have lost to Invictus Gaming and Royal Never Give Up already, they're at a disadvantage. Invictus Gaming beat them out, so that puts them in a pretty good place so far. OMG, of course, by the same token, beat Invictus Gaming. So right now we have a situation where you kind of feel like Invictus Gaming has Vici Gaming's number because they beat Vici Gaming both times that they face them. OMG have Invictus Gaming's number because they beat them both times they face them. Vici Gaming and OMG still have to play each other again, and this is where it gets interesting, because Vici Gaming beat OMG the first time, but they had a very, very different roster. So theoretically, it could be that, Vici Gaming always beats OMG, Invictus Gaming always beats Vici Gaming, and OMG always beats Invictus Gaming, which makes it really interesting, right, overall. Talk also about the other opponents that they have left to face. Invictus Gaming will only have one more opponent other than Hyper Youth Gaming, and that's going to be Royal Never Give Up. Theoretically, IG can beat Royal. I think Royal have a fairly one-dimensional style, and Invictus Gaming have actually defeated them before. So it's not too far out of the question, and that could put them in a very good standings. OMG also still have to face Royal Never Give Up. Again, not out of the question that OMG can sort of pseudo upset Royal Never Give Up and give them a really, really good position. OMG also still have to face Edward Gaming, which is going to hurt them a lot, because I don't see anyone beating Edward Gaming for the rest of the regular season. Vici Gaming also still have to face Edward Gaming. So once you get those out of the way, and let's just, for the sake of it, predict that these teams will lose to Royal Never Give Up and Edward Gaming in general, you end up with 8-7, 8-8, and 7-8 for OMG, Invictus Gaming, and Vici Gaming, with the Vici Gaming versus OMG game still yet to play. Once that happens, if you say, let's assume Vici Gaming beats OMG, then everyone is 8-8-8-8. That's the very interesting scenario where it comes down to the amount of single match losses that teams have. So when you win a match, you either 2-0 or you 2-1. So if you have a tendency to 2-1 more, it's going to count against you in the standings. Right now, you can look at the individual game wins and losses of these teams: 17-15, 17-17, and 17-16. It's all really, really close. So every single match, every single game loss is going to count a lot. Youth Gaming probably won't win a series, but maybe they can take a game off of Invictus Gaming or Vici Gaming. That kind of thing is going to hurt them a lot. Of course, if OMG beats Vici Gaming, then we have a pretty clear-cut set, right? Then you're going to have a situation where OMG are 9-7, they get the third place bye, Invictus Gaming are 8-8, they get fourth place, and Vici Gaming are unfortunately out. For them. Of course, if either Invictus Gaming or OMG beat Royal Never Give Up, that also completely changes the situation, because you have, going into the match, Royal will give up, OMG are suddenly 9-6, right? And it doesn't matter what the Vici Gaming match is. Or Invictus Gaming are suddenly 9-7, and they're completely safe and probably clinched for 6th. Or probably clinched for 3rd. So these are the situations that you have to consider. I think Vici Gaming, the best they can do is 4th. So the best they can do is actually make playoffs, because they've lost to Invictus Gaming twice. Now, let's talk about the way these teams operate and kind of their identities. It's really hard to nail down some of these identities. Because I feel like these teams have fluctuated a lot. I think that OMG, the really interesting thing about them is that their players don't have especially deep champion pools, but almost all of them have at least one champion where if they get it, they can kind of destroy the game with it. With Trend, you have Lee Sin, really, really strong. It also works in tandem with Five's pick, the support, which is Thresh. So you see these really interesting, pick-off games with Thresh, Lee Sin play when OMG get these picks. Then you have Cool, who also will play this style, go along with the Thresh, the Lee Sin, with Twisted Fate. So this kind of pick composition style, this is what you think of traditionally when you think of OMG, even though the players are extremely different. Very different. And then you have top laner, who's a tank player. Maokai is back in vogue now. Yay. I really don't, I'll get to this later, but I really don't like Maokai that much at the moment, especially with picks like Poppy Up. So, tank player, very, very favoring Xiang's preferred playstyle. He likes playing tanks. That's the kind of player he is. You get the aggressive jungle style. Chuen likes to think he's this type of player, and he's actually pretty decent at Lee Sin, and Gragas is becoming an increasing staple for him. Cool, really likes to play these pick style games. He loves Twisted Fate. Teams pretty much always ban Twisted Fate against him. Then you have SMLZ, who kind of fits in wherever you need him to, and he's relied upon a lot. Right now, he's sort of become the pillar, the reliable part of the team. I really think that to get to OMG, you want to think about denying Thresh, because Five doesn't have that deep of a champion pool. He used to be a Thresh Annie main, and Annie really isn't good right now. I think his Alistar has improved tremendously, so it's not as good, but just the amount of things he can do with Thresh is kind of ridiculous. Zero actually said after one of the games that he thinks that Five's Thresh is on par with Mata's. I don't really agree but the difference between his Thresh and his other champions is really significant, and what he's able to do with his lanterns are really good, actually. Like, it's sometimes you have the Thresh players who do the hooks really well, right? You have the box type Thresh players. He's extremely good with the lanterns and setting up things like this. Overall, I think this team isn't necessarily a team fighting team. They like to move to different places around the map and create opportunities with flanks like this. They enjoy split pushing. They're imperfect at all these things, but they're better at them than team fighting. Which is why if they're in a group situation and you're IG who really like to team fight, then you can take advantage of them. Of course, OMG were pretty good at avoiding that and pretty good at taking advantage of situations where a player on IG is caught out. So that's why I think OMG kind of countered IG pretty well, is that they didn't consistently let IG get the situations that they won. Out of 5 games that they played, IG only won 1 in the regular season. Invictus Gaming then. Invictus Gaming, early on, they were really interesting because Invictus Gaming's top laner and mid laner, Zitan Rookie, always had the highest CS lead at 10 minutes over their opponents on average. That's still true. But the difference is that now, of course, tanks are more in vogue, so you have less of the split pushing, bruiser type Fiora stuff that Zatai was playing. Gangplank is less good. They really loved playing with Gangplank and LeBlanc because you could have this really early map pressure and control with the LeBlanc that you're seeding up a little bit by waiting for Gangplank to scale, and then late game, Gangplank kind of deters you from contesting anything, and you can use an AD carry or you can team fight with that as a zoning mechanism. They're really good at controlling the waves in the early game and keeping the wave in the middle, and their communication was really strong, so Kid would come and gank and they could get easy ganks off of top and mid. Actually, Kid is among the top first blood getters in the league, right? People hear this and they cringe. But I think people realize that IG don't do anything with their bottom lane, and their bottom lane is really, really bad at staying safe. In a lot of these famous teams that were really topside oriented, their bottom lane was incredibly good at warding for themselves and staying safe, so that if enemy junglers went bot, they wouldn't die. This is not true of Invictus Gaming's bot lane. They have 2 AD carries that they switch out. They have time and they have rain, and both of them are pretty bad. I actually had a conversation today where I said I wish Jen Long would come back. I don't know if you know who Jen Long is, but Jen Long is an AD carry. He used to be part of Young Glory, and in 2014 summer, I thought he was the worst AD carry in the league. He chose to retire after being heavily criticized and feeling like he held his team back. But this is what happens when you criticize people like Vardags and Jen Long. You end up with people like Rain and Time. Where do they find them? It's so weird. Anyway, back on point is that they're effectively free food. So Chris, if you don't know anything about Chris, is that he drafts protect the AD carry comps. It's his favorite thing in the world, probably because he's worked for Royal Club. And he drafts protect the AD carry comps, but when you have a really, really bad AD carry, they can sometimes be just as good as when you have a really good one. Because if you have a bad one and you get like 10 million shields, this prevents him from dying in teamfights. So this is what they did. The team saw this, and it was scary at first, and it allowed them to win some games, but then they said, you know what, we're just gonna ban Lulu. There's not really anything else that we can't play against, because we also let you have your Gangplank LeBlanc comp, and we just still got a ton of kills on your bot lane. We're gonna ban Karg too. Invictus Gaming. They're not doing so hot. I honestly don't know what to do about this team, because I feel like beating them is so completely straightforward. Just, even OMG, they couldn't, right? They couldn't kill Rookie. He was so good at positioning, and he was able to use Victor extremely well in team fights, and constantly win fights just by himself. But they just, it's like, you avoid him. He's one guy, and the rest is kind of nothing. Sad to say. I mean, I think it's worsened. It's gotten much worse because tanks are really, really strong now. So they don't have the secondary carry threat in Zatai. They have a tank who's just going to run at your face. And yeah, that's threatening and you can't kill it, but it's another thing you just avoid. And you win the game by backdooring or split pushing or whatever, which is why I think OMG kind of have a Invictus Gaming's number. If you avoid where rookie exerts the most pressure, aka a team fight, you can just win the game. Now, Vici Gaming. Vici Gaming are interesting because I actually think Dandy is either the best or the second best performing jungler in the league right now, depending on how you rate Clear Love. And his team has gotten really good at working around him, and they kind of like IG have an issue where their bottom lane isn't very good, but their bottom lane is good enough that if you give it attention and you give it pressure with your jungler being very proactive, then they know what to do with the lead, and they can actually play it out, and Endless has a couple champions that he's decent on. And Dwan, I actually think, is Dwan. Caveman. Okay. Caveman, I actually think, is developing pretty well. So, it's not too bad. The problem is that probably their second most reliable player after Dandy is Long. And he's just kind of the solid top laner, but he can be very explosive in carry games occasionally. He's reliable in that he's not going to be a hole in the map, but he isn't reliable in that you can't rely on him to carry. Easyhoon, I think, is good when he has a champion he can teleport on or exert a lot of map pressure on, because just sitting and holding lane isn't really working for them. They need someone else who can help bot, someone else who can help top. So for me, you ban Lysandra, you ban TF, and they don't really have anything. People have been banning Ryze against them because he'll run TP Ryze, but I don't think you need to do that. I think you can just bully it. It won't wave clear, and it can't really TP anywhere if it doesn't have a clear wave, so not a big deal to me. So I think Vici Gaming and IG are ultimately weaker because there's a more straightforward way to dismantle them in picks and bans. They have one kind of effective style. OMG, I think, are a bit more complicated because you have these pocket picks and you can maybe ban them out, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're disabling them. You're just getting rid of some of their pocket picks, and they can still play around you. This is why I think OMG are kind of superior right now, is that they're playing around some of their weak points rather than acknowledging their weak points and playing the same style anyway that relies on their weak points, if this makes sense. Because Vici Gaming and Invictus Gaming, they're acknowledging their weak points, but they're trying to feed their weak points and prop them up. Whereas OMG are saying, okay, we're weak in these areas, we're just not going to do that. So, this is kind of, I think OMG are probably actually even going to beat Vici Gaming in the end. I think that people should watch the first two games at least because they were really interesting. The rest of the games were less interesting today. I think that I'll talk a little bit about the third game and the one point that was interesting so that you don't have to watch it. But the first two games, it came down to me. The Maokai pick was really, really huge. And this is what I was going to talk about, is that in the first game, they had a Poppy top, and Poppy top could get to the back line and do a bunch of stuff because it's Poppy, you can't really stop a Poppy. Whereas Maokai, you can slow it down, and they had an Azir, which is really good at zoning, and they had another, I think, Trundle, which is really good at zoning, and then you just couldn't get to the Azir and the Sivir, and they did so much free hitting that's why I think Royal Never Give Up won the first game. Second game, similar situation, except overall, Third Gaming just played it better. Third game was interesting to me because they left the Nidalee open against EDG, and probably the only instance I've seen EDG not ban Nidalee this season. I think there was another instance and they lost the game because the other team picked the Nidalee and Clearlove picked it. Then, Royal Never Give Up were really smart initially, and they invaded it twice and killed the Nidalee twice. Because if you are going to play against EDG, you should probably invade on Clearlove and kill him a lot. It's the best way to do it. But then Clearlove just went top, and he got a double kill, and it completely invalidated everything that they'd done. It's a sad, sad reality. But speaking of the third game, there was something slightly interesting that I want to talk about now. When Looper builds Banner of Command, which is good because EDG only have one source of attack damage, right? So it's hard to kill the Banner of Command minions with magic because of the MR. But so you would have to send Deft, Lucian bottom. So it was really smart of them to get Banner of Command and try to set up the push, because Royal Never Give Up really like Baron. And this was the weird thing about the series, is that Royal Never Give Up, I don't think, contested or tried to go for Baron independently a single time. They didn't try to bait Baron or anything, and Royal Never Give Up love Baron. It's like their favorite thing ever. The game they won, they didn't touch it the entire time. It was weird. But they set up for a strategy that theoretically should get them a Baron, because you're creating a Banner of Command minion. The AD carry should have to go bottom. So initially, Edward Gaming combated this by sending a bunch of people top and getting the top turret and poking Xiaohu down, so Xiaohu had to back, and they couldn't go for Baron. Second time they did this, though, they did end up sending Def bottom. Royal Never Give Up didn't go for Baron. It was weird. They should have gone for the Baron. That's why that game for me wasn't that interesting overall. But the rest of the first two games were pretty good. If you like TP flanks, especially, really, really great series for TP flanks. Invictus Gaming versus OMG. First game, I think OMG initially play around what Invictus Gaming want to do well. They have a lot of wave clear. Invictus Gaming's only real response is to get free farm on the cog, which they do, and then they win late, because that's how Invictus Gaming work with that comp. Third game, people really hated the third game, but I thought it had a lot of interesting moments. I don't necessarily recommend you watch it, but the way that they executed the TF comp in places, the way they got picks with the Gragas in places, the way that OMG seemed to be able to go to one side of the map whenever it was necessary, was interesting to me. The conclusion where they realized they couldn't teamfight the victor and they found a way to play around it was interesting to me. Overall, I think OMG deserved that win. It was a hard game. Third game, yeah, they should have closed faster. That's basically it, is that they should have closed much faster, and that's why I think it's not the best showing from them, because they had a monstrous lead. So anyway, this has been the LPL brief, and I'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully LGD versus WE will be really good.